Hello everybody, this is Neon here for the second edition of Game of the Week. This is from the ETS, of course, that happened just yesterday between Flash and SecondBlue. Flash is on Kennadins and SecondBlue is on Icaria Blue, something of their signature decks, I think, in some ways. So, not going to talk too much about the compositions of the decks here because I think that they're pretty straightforward and pretty typical of the decks we've seen in the past. Should be noted that Flash's version of the deck is not playing Channel the Tempest. He's not a fan of that build of the deck, which is the deck that we were talking about a bit last week. So he's gone back to a more traditional build, but if you've been playing on the ladder or whatever, you've probably seen some version of a deck very, very similar to this. So there's not too much different, I think, to note here. SecondBlue's hand, playing Icaria Blue. Couple of things to note in this particular build of the deck. One is the Stars of Steel Dice Show, a card that hasn't been super popular in the Icaria Blue decks as of late from my experience. Definitely a card that was standard issue in all sorts of decks for a very long time, but it has fallen out of favor as it hasn't been able to keep up with the power level of the game, in my opinion. We also see 2 Rise to the Challenge, another card that has sort of fallen out of favor a touch. The 2 Unstable Form is also quite unusual. I'm actually interested to hear some of the rationale. I guess just against the Alessi decks, it's a really powerful card against Alessi. Yeah, so nothing too crazy here, though. The market, it should be noted, for SecondBlue, we have 1 Vanquish, 1 the Omen of Austerity, we have a Island's Choice, we have a Harsh Rule, and an Icaria, pretty standard stuff. And then for Flashes, we have the Banner, Mola Nikova, the Flamestoker, the Choice, Caleb's Choice, and the Combustion Cell. So that'll be something that comes up over the course of the game. So let's get into the game. And just for the record, what I'm going to actually do this time is I'm just going to cast the game sort of normally from beginning to end. And then after that's done, I'm going to go back and do some particular analysis of the specific sections of the game and what I thought was interesting. Now, as is often the case, we're going to have a few turns of setup here. Neither of these decks is particularly fast to the gate, so there'll be a couple turns of sort of setup as we go through the game here. Going to play out the power, scout a lot, get things set up. It should be noted that Flash's deck is slightly favored in this matchup according to him. He knows the matchup better than I do. I'll admit that I haven't played this matchup a ton myself, so I don't have that information, but he's been really focusing on this deck very heavily and knows what's up. Basically, there's a systematic problem for armory style or weapon heavy style decks against any deck that's playing a lot of Kennadins, because you're really hard pressed to actually get face damage across with any of your weapons. Sort of invalidates them, and not entirely, but at least in part. So like cards like the Oracle Hammer, etc., are really not well positioned in this matchup, invalidating a good chunk of SecondBlue's deck. Like, see right here we have a sort of Icaria that's like okay-ish on this board, but really not very. So going to instead play out the Winchest Merchant. Now, in case you don't remember, the composition of the market is we have an Omen of Austerity, a Island's Choice, a Vanquish, a Harsh Rule, and an Icaria. So in this position, there's actually sort of a juncture where it's like, I don't actually know what's good here exactly. I mean, Harsh Rule, I guess, is the best, especially given the fact that there's no even double fire, let alone triple fire for the Icaria. But the Harsh Rule seems like okay here, but I mean, it's also not great. So this is something of a compositional problem for the market. There isn't a good tool in this kind of situation. I guess that I would want to get the Icaria, but the fire sigil situation is what's holding you back there. But anyway, going to just sort of exchange plays back and forth sort of slowly and develop value and such. Now, Flash does have an interesting decision from this point because he has the opportunity to play a Merchant out and could get either a Flamestoker or a Nikova or a Combustion Cell. There's also a Power and Caleb's Choice in the market as well, which is all really interesting decisions. Now, he is going to go for the Flamestoker, given how little pressure he's under. And the fact that he has the face Aegis. One of the concerns, of course, is that with Second Blue having access to his market, it would have been very useful for him to pull up the Omen of Austerity, which would be a really good counter to the Flamestoker, but given the fact that Flash has the face Aegis, I think that really sets it over the edge. So we are going to get the Flamestoker out here. Lots of 5/5s going to be coming in the near future. Slowly and steady. But we see here the challenge, of course, with Second Blue's deck, and in this matchup, he's slowly been working through these Kennadins, really not able to make very much progress. Definitely not been putting Flash under very much pressure, which has allowed him to set this up. He really needs to find something like an Icaria very soon, or plus the material to cast it, and in order to actually get back into this game, because he's so far behind in terms of just, progress on the board. Now, the Risen, of course, that's going to be coming down here is going to help, but doesn't totally resolve the problems given how bad he is at blocking. But the life still will obviously help in maintaining the life total and will balance out with the 5/5. Now, this play is actually really great, this attacking in with the Kennadins. This does a few different things. It does represent Torch, and it also represents End of Hostilities, because if the End of Hostilities the Risen, then after it blocks the 1/1, you're able to shoot it down with the 3 damage. Now, there is this question of whether or not Flash should be playing out the End of Hostilities here. He doesn't know whether there's the Island's Choice in hand or not, which is a big part of what would inform this, and you kind of would rather play around that. But instead, he decides to just play out the 3/1/1s, and hoping to actually get the full value off of it. Now we get the Hailstorm out, which does an okay job of helping Second Blue keep ahead. Given just the way that the life total math works, we're getting gain 5, lose 5 per turn from Second Blue, and then Flash is just dealing 5 per turn. So ultimately, Second Blue is slowly getting ahead in terms of the life total race. But and you'll also notice that he's doing a really good job of keeping up the Island's Choice over the course of this game in order to play around the End of Hostilities. Clearly in this position, though, we now have a decision to make. We have to play out the Rise of the Challenge, and it's hard to know what's best in this position. The Risen is a great and interesting potential choice, given the fact that it helps you get on board, it keeps your life total high, which clearly this is turning into something of a race. You can also get an Icaria, which is a little bit of a gamble, because you need to also get the fire influence, so that's also appealing as well. He ends up actually opting for the Starseal Dice Show, which I'm not a fan of, honestly, in this situation. This is a deck that you have all of these stupid little 1/1s to battle through. Like, already on this board, it's going to be hard to actually hit face at any point with the Starseal Dice Show. Just playing out these little 1/1s. I guess you have the idea of, like, you play it out next turn, you kill both of the 1/1s, or maybe you harsh rule away the board or something like this, but it's a little bit of a annoying little setup there. Okay, so from this position, nothing else to be done. I mean, playing out the power, nothing else to be done after that. Going to just pass the turn. And then Flash will be posed with an interesting decision about whether or not he plays out his End of Hostilities here, because he does know that there is this Rise of the Challenge that came through. What could be, he really doesn't know. He might be guessing something like Ryzen or Icaria, depending on the composition of the hand. This is quite a decent play that we see here, with the End of Hostilities trying to bait out something like the Island's Choice to happen in response, but doesn't end up pulling that off. Now we actually have a really interesting decision. We're going to come back to this point from later on when we are done the whole series, but we have the option of going something like the 4/1 weapon, the Auric Runehammer, kill the 5/4, attack in with Risen, keep up the Torch in order to battle against whatever. He decides instead to go for the Harsh Rule, which is interesting choice, but it actually puts him very behind on board, given now that there's the 1/1 that comes through. We have the 5/5 that's going to be coming for the next turn, and basically next turn, Second Blue is dead, like as far as I can read. Now he does play out the Torch in order to you remove that extra damage, which will probably end up being matter in the math. We do get the unstable form on the 5/5, which is an interesting little interaction in case you didn't know about this. But this dies to a lot of stuff. It does really hamper the attack of something like the Daisho. Now, it should be noted too that the attack with the 5/5, the killing with the 1/1 with the torch is a useful technique if you're setting up for lethal. But the thing is that there was no lethal setup, given the fact that Flash is at 14 as opposed to 12, and the difference is quite important for the Daisho. We are going to get an end of hostilities on this 5/5, which would have ended up creating a lethal attack. Stops that, which isn't the end of the world, though. We do get another unstable form out. This is a 4/4 double damage, but this isn't good enough, really, because we're going to get this, of course, to be killed off. We get the Daisho attack, and now we have a setup where Flash can play out the 5/5, can end of hostilities the 5/5, and get 10 damage in, which ends the game guaranteed. So congratulations for him for winning. So let's take a moment to go back and talk about some of the things that happened in that game. So there are two aspects of the deck building that I want to draw attention to. The first is that in SecondBlue's deck, there's a little bit lower of fire influence density than I usually like in a deck like this, and that could have had an impact on Icaria being played in the course of that game. Like, obviously Icaria wasn't drawn, but there were times when there was the option to draw Icaria off of something like the Merchants or off the Rise to the Challenge, and had there been an extra fire sigil, then that could have been on the table, and that could have made the difference in the course of that game. I mean, at the end of the game, Flash was at 2 life, so it definitely would have mattered to have access to something like that. So that's one that I'm interested in, a bit of a deck building decision there. The markets too for SecondBlue, I'm not sure if this is the best composition. I really don't know. It just felt as if it was low impact, and that even drawing a Merchant later on in the game would have still not necessarily been as impactful as possible. Maybe it's the Islands choice. I'm not really a huge fan of that in the market in this particular configuration of the deck, but I honestly don't know for sure. Lightning Strike, this was something that I didn't really mention earlier in the game, but he threw it away early because it wasn't great. In general, I feel as if the composition of this deck, even if the Icaria Blue versus Kennadins matchup is Kennadins' favor to this particular version of the deck, I don't feel is well positioned in this matchup if this is something you want to fight against. Now, this is still in the mid-game. I think that the early game was played very well by both players. I mean, there wasn't a lot of hard decisions, but it was played well nonetheless. This is the one, though, that I am really interested to see what other people's thoughts are on this, because I actually don't know about whether or not Flash should have played out the end of hostilities here. There are a few different considerations. One, you do know that SecondBlue drew the Islands choice off of the Merchant in the last game, and you could maybe imagine that that's just a default position that he has against this deck. So you might be thinking that he has an increased chance of having the Islands choice in hand. I don't believe that there's been any juncture up until now to show the Islands choice one way or another, so it's a really hard read to have. Now, so obviously you want to play around that if you're Flash. This is an important card to play around because having that countered is useful. Now, you do, of course, want, though, the Tribute enabled on your end of hostilities, but there's no real mechanism for enabling that. It's not also like SecondBlue is going to be blocking a huge amount. Like, you know that he doesn't really have Icaria, probably, given that there's just the way that the game is played out, that at least he's struggling to get the fire influence, so that would be one of the few units that he really would be playing, that would be blocking, and you don't have the combustion cell. I guess that you could draw something like a torch, which is a useful thing to do, but then you're playing more into the Islands choice, which is a possibility. And not to mention the fact that it's just like getting the card out of your hand in at some level. Like it's useful to just play it out, use your power efficiently, and etc. And the assembly line does that a lot worse. So I really, really don't know whether this is correct or not, and I'd be very interested to hear what other people's thoughts are. I'm really tempted to just jam it because Risen is such a good target, and you can kill the 2/2, etc. Or you can go face with the 3 damage. It's close. So this one is a hard juncture, and I really don't know the correct answer. Actually, how about this? Whoever gives me the best justification and the best reason whether to play it or not, I'll give you a shout out in the next video about what you think is the correct play here. One final thing to note, though, actually, about this situation that's interesting to pick up on is that this actually specifically gives SecondBlue the information that Flash has End of Hostilities in hand. Given the fact that we don't have him, we don't have any stops. Like over the course of the next couple turns, we're not going to see any stops out of Flash's deck, and as a result, like the only other way to deal this 3 damage to kill the Risen, because attacking in these 1/1s into a Risen is actually a pretty big risk. I mean, it could be a really aggressive bluff that seems pretty ambitious, though, given the fact that this is turning into a life race. It really seems that it's exactly End of Hostility, because that's the one that would be able to get that interaction across. So SecondBlue is more likely to play around it as a result of that if they're really paying attention. This is a subtle thing, so I don't know whether he would have picked up on that, but interesting point to note. And then it would be in hand, too, because I think that if it was on the top of the deck, he'd be more likely to just play it out kind of no matter what. It's like when it's in the hand, specifically. That's an interesting point to make. Now, this is the juncture that we're at next, which is, of course, when SecondBlue is going to be playing the Rise of the Challenge, which is a really hard decision, even though there are not a lot of possibilities here. I mean, really, if you go through all the possibilities, there are a handful. You could go for sort of Icaria, you could go for or Runehammer, but those are pretty obviously bad. Winchester Merchant, another one that's available, not really good in the situation. The only ones that I think are any consideration whatsoever are Icaria, Risen, and Starseal Daisho, because you need something that's pretty impactful here. Each of them has their own pros and cons in obvious ways. Icaria is really appealing here if you had 3 fire influence, which you don't. So this would be a really big roll of the dice. So I think that it was correct to not grab Icaria, especially given that this deck is a little bit fire light as a result of that. I mean, this also, though, it does go to a broader deck building choice, but whether or not there should be different targets, like, I don't know, a Duelist Blade or something like this, sort of the Sky King. I don't really think so. I think the combination of targets are fine, and this particular situation is a little bit strange. Usually in this sort of situation, an Icaria is good enough, and that's kind of what you want, and it should be. And if there's a problem in the deck building, it wouldn't be that there's insufficient good threats in this kind of juncture. It's that there isn't enough fire influence for this kind of juncture. So, anyway, Icaria, therefore, off the table. So you have Risen or Starseal Daisho, and I think that the rationale as to why SecondBlue went for the Daisho is the life total of Flash. It's basically just this logic of Flash is at 11, and this is a deck that has no life gain. So I just need to find a way to connect with a Daisho uninterrupted, and I should be golden. And I mean, I have Harsh Rule in hand too, right? Like that, I could probably set that up. That's a lot harder though than it sounds. We do know that like the Flash has the 2/1/1s in play. We also have at least 1/1 in hand. We know that because that came off of a Waystone. So it is hard to think about exactly all these different permutations. Now there is of course the caveat though that we mentioned earlier that SecondBlue does have good reason to believe that Flash has an End of Hostilities in hand, which does make it hard to get the Risen, and also we don't have the opportunity to do something like play a Risen and then hold up the end of the Island's Choice next turn either. That also isn't an option. So really in quite the bind. This is another one that's really close, especially if you're assuming that it understands the End of Hostilities is in hand. If he doesn't consider that, I think that Risen is definitely the correct option. But if he made that read, then I think that it's a lot closer to a toss-up, and maybe you want to even hold off for another turn afterwards, hopefully drawing that 9th power, so you're able to play Risen, hold up Island's Choice, and really blow them out in the air. That I think is probably the best option, though it is quite close. And it should be noticed too that SecondBlue did an interesting job of holding up the island's choice through most of the game. There wasn't too many ways in which to get punished for this, so I think that it was probably correct, more or less. I mean, also it's so good against something like a Kenna that comes down, which is an important possibility. Which is Kenna is so good at just eating something like a Risen, so I don't mind that for sure, of holding it up. Not that there were a lot of opportunities to really power down, though. So here's the last juncture that I would point out that I think is an interesting strategic decision. So we look at this position. We have the opportunity from SecondBlue's perspective to either play Horse Rule, clear out the boards, start back entirely, and try and set up lethal with our Starsteel Dice Show. This has a number of problems. One, we know there is going to be a 1-1 left over on board and 1-1 in Flash's hand. Two, Flash is at 14 now, no longer 11. It should be noted also that Flash had the interesting strategic decision before to pick off to hit the Risen with the summon ability off of his Risen in order to increase his life total. That actually ends up winning him the game because his life total is a little bit higher. Really useful little tactic there, very, very tight play as a result. Yeah, as a result of this, now we have this interesting decision where the dice show setup and trying to clear the board for the dice show is just not really that likely to be successful. There are a number of things that have gone wrong, and you also have the Auric Runehammer, which is just not good in this matchup. And using that efficiently, getting the most out of a resource like that, seems important to me. And you get to hold up Torch in case there's any reason to hold up Torch. You get to hold up Island's Choice, which is obviously, we've been talking so much about the possibility of end hostilities in Flash's hand. Should be noted that Flash has been warping in these end hostilities, so he's been very lucky in that respect. So this is a really, I can understand why SecondBlue decides to Harsh Rule, but I really don't think that this is correct in this situation. He can ride the flyer to victory in a lot of cases. There's just not quite enough damage. He's got the face Aegis too that could most likely set up a win for him. So I think that given this situation, I personally like hit with the Runehammer on the 5/4, attack with his own 5/4, and then hold up Torch and Island's Choice, and see how things play out over the course of the next couple turns, and maybe he does actually end up having a juncture to hit with the dice. Not to mention the fact that this does 5 damage, gets his opponent down to 9, which is a much better life total. It means that you really only have one more hit probably that you need to get across. If you ever get into a juncture where you have Harsh Rule plus, like a weapon to attack with, that's probably lethal. So, and you're getting up to the power numbers where you can do that. So all of these things make it really, really close. I don't know how I would have responded to this, but I think that it's probably correct to just use the Auric Runehammer. From here, things should work out that Flash draws a lot more plays a lot more of the 5/5s and the unstable form, to pair it with, which makes it frustrating. And SecondBlue isn't able to really mount any counteroffensive to get those last couple of points across after connecting with the dice show for 12, which is how the game turns out. But anyway, that is my thoughts on the game. Really interesting one, well played by both players more or less, and I really enjoyed it. Now, hopefully, you guys enjoyed it too. If there were any points that you think that I missed, please sure to comment below. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, and also thoughts on the updated and changed format for the discussion. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. This is brought to you by A+Space Games, a great place to find all sorts of card game related content. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. It really does help people find the channel. Set notifications to make sure you don't miss any of our uploads. Follow us on Twitter at A+Space Games and at Neon Eternal. Follow us on Facebook and join the group as well. Support us on Patreon and find links to all of these things below. Thank you again, everybody. Take care.